This is Gemara Yevamos Daf Gimel. All the learning has been generously sponsored as an incredible schos refuah shlema for Ched Valeya Bas Saradina Mir Tashem. The learning the entire Chabura, the schos HaTorah Limatera Barabim should have the ability to bring Ched Valeya Bas Saradina an incredible and complete refuah shlema, as well as all learning should be a schos shidduch for Yisrael Chaim. Ben Devaira Tamtu B'Sarach Shalom Levizava Oifik Ben Tali Shem Elchai Ablamudis Bas Sima Malka, as well as learning Shavias Chusfur Shleima for Shmuel Yos and your faith Shmuel Ben Tila Nadal Zil V'Chlas Nacham Bas Shiva Stara Bluma Bas Mendel Mush Yeshua Ben Malka Bat Shava Vego Shirachana B'Seich Sha'ar Chayli Yisrael. We're holding on the last two words of Beis Amid Beis. Says the Gemara Omar. Let's get the highlighting up and working over here. 1 second. Says the Gemara. Here we go. Amar Rav. Says Rav, as we turn over to today's Daf Pei Gimel Amid Aleph. Lesa Lemas Nisan Makmi Braisa. The Mishnah does not apply, is not applicable due to a brisa. Now, of course, everyone's wondering that's a little bit backwards, because usually we say the brisa is not applicable due to a mishnah. The Gemara is going to get there. Now, what din are we discussing? We're discussing, as the top Rashi points out so eloquently as always, the Rabbi Rashi teaches us that an androgynous could feed his wife truma. An androgynous, we know, who at some level is a suffix, is a doubt if he's a male or a female. Yet our Mishnah said he's allowed to feed his wife truma. So that din in the Mishnah does not apply due to the brisa, and as Rashi continues and teaches us that what it's a suffix, or says Rabbi Yossi in the brisa, if an androgynous is indeed a zachar or not. Titanya, says the Gemara, we learned in a brisa, Rabbi Yossi Omer androgynous b'riyah b'fnei atzmahu v'lo yichriv b'chachamim. An androgynous is a creation unto itself, and the Chachamim did not determine with absolute conclusiveness whether im zachar in the keva, if they're male or female. So says the Gemara, due to the brisa that says it's a doubt, the Mishnah has no standing. Ask the Gemara, the kash that we pointed out 4 lines to the top. Less the brisa makimas nisan. The brisa should fall away in light of our Mishnah that says it's a vadai. Says the Gemara, for the fact that Rav Yossi left his peer in the Mishnah, Rav Yossi didn't talk on his own. In the Mishnah, he spoke together with another Tana. And over here in the Brisa, and Rashi points out, who is it? Rav Shimon. And in the Brisa, he speaks on his own. Shema Mina Hadar Bey. The Brisas were later. So we have a Mishnah in which Rav Yossi is talking together with a pair. In the Brisa, Rav Yossi speaks on his own. So what do we see? We see is Rav Yossi is being chayzer, Rav Yossi is retracting, and that's why the Gemara says the Rav Yossi in the Mishnah that it's a vadai that androgynous could yes feed his wife truma does not apply in light of the Brisa. Shmuel Amar, and Shmuel argues, and he says this was Rav. Shmuel Amar less the Brisa makimas nisan. Says the Gemara, says Shmuel, no, the Brisa does not apply due to our Mishnah. Ask the Gemara, ask the Gemara the opposite. The Mishnah should fall off. Why should the Mishnah fall off? Because Shmuel teaches us a rule. The chayish lechida. Shmuel is always of the opinion that we're worried about a singular opinion, and therefore says the Gemara, anytime you have a singular opinion, and Rashi points out, which is more machmir than the roiv, Shmuel goes with that singular opinion. So says the Gemara, Shmuel should seemingly go with the Brisa. Answers the Gemara, honey, milikilo misakro masnisan. When does Shmuel say, be chayshish and be careful and be wary of a singular opinion? That's when it won't blow the whole thing up. It won't make the Mishnah null and void. But if by being worried for the singular opinion, it's oiker uproots the entire Mishnah, then not. Then in that case, Shmuel is not chayshesh for the singular opinion. Says the Gemara, concluding the discussions for the past day or so. Amri Bey Rav Mishmei de Rav Alachik Rav Yesi Bandrogenis Ube Harkava, which of course the din of Harkava we don't know yet. The Gemara is going to explain, but that's the Psak Halacha. Ushmol Amar Bekushi Ube Kiddush, by Kushi and by Kiddush, which again we're going to see. Kushi is going to have to do with the dam of an isha when she's in labor. Kiddush is going to have to do with making something unfit, making something batal, impure, as we'll see, and that's the Gemara. So we're passing like Rav Yesi by androgynous. That's of course why we're bringing this in. And our kava, and Shmuel says Ushmuel Amar by two other dinim. So the Gemara now explains. We're about 12 lines down. The first one in line is Ubekiddish. Androgynous Hadamar. That was our whole discussion. Har kava. What's his din of our kava? What's his din of grafting? The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah. Ein noitin mei mavrichin mei markivin erev shivi is pachas mishleshim yain. A din, a memra from the Gemara in Shvi, which we've seen more recently in the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, that an erev Shvi is 30 days prior to Rosh Hashanah. You're not allowed to be noitin to plant a tree. You're not allowed to be mavrichin to bend the vine. You bend the vine, you insert it into the ground, and it grows back up. And you're not allowed to be kivin, you're not allowed to be graft a branch onto an existing tree. For all these things, within 30 days of Nei Rosh Hashanah. If you did that, you have to uproot it. That's the din of the Tanakama. So within 30 days, you're not allowed to plant, graft, and put a shoot in the ground. And if you did, you got to uproot it. Rav Yehuda Aimer, continuing the Brayso, says Rav Yehuda, no, it's not 30 days. It something takes 3 days to root. So anything that doesn't root within 3 days, 3 days shaving a kilet does not take root. And Rav Yosi, in this the opinion we're looking for, because we're passing like Rav Yosi in this case, Rav Shimon Aimrim, Shtei Shabbos is 2 weeks. V'Omer Rav Nachman, Rav Hula, Divi Aimer Shleishim, says Rav Nachman, that the one that says 30, he says it's not really 30. So Shleishim Ushleish, Divi Aimer Shleisha, so Shleisha Ushleish, Divi Aimer Shtei Shabbos, so Shtei Shabbos Ushleishim. So Rav Nachman points out that these three opinions are not really absolute. It doesn't just mean 33 or 2 weeks 14. It means 60, 4 weeks or 6 days. Everything is doubled. Ushmul Amar. Period. So this is the second case, like we're passing like Rav Yosi. Din number one was the din in our Mishnah that Rav Yosi says that a dragoness could feed his wife truma. Din number two is this din of our kava. This din within 30 days of Rosh Hashanah, that you have 2 weeks that you're not within 2 weeks you're not allowed to plant, graft, and these other items. And now once we brought down the Psak Halacha, the Gemara continues and teaches us. Ushmuel Amar says Shmuel 10 lines from the bottom. The first one line is Bekushi uvikiddish. Shmuel says that we pass like Rav Yosi in 2 other areas by Kushi and Kiddush. What's Kushi and Kiddush? Says the Gemara Kushi. The time learned to the Mishnah Kami Kishua. How long does the kishua, does the pain, the endurance of a woman last in labor? What's the difference that this it's being that if there's any dam, we assume that dam is part of the labor. Let's look at Rashi's a big sugya. Let's look at Rashi for a moment. Rashi is approximately 12, 15 lines of the wide lines. Rashi says, Kami ki kishuel, the Kaimelana Gemara Nida. Benida de Araisa, on the Araisa level, Hamikasha Besay Yud Aleph, Shvenida Nida, the 11 days between different Nidas, Roya Dam, Gimel Yom, she's down for 3 days, Retuf in a row, Machmasar Vavlada, it doesn't make her into a ziva. And this is the complicated sugya of the counting of the 11 days, the din of zava and zava ketana, zava gedayla, the discharge, the flow that has to be for 3 days to make a zava gedayla. And the Gemara there teaches us that within a certain amount of time of the leida, we attribute all dam to dam leida. This is part of the birth, and it doesn't count to make her into a zava, a ziva, etc. Eli made tuma as a lady ki yoled is gredasa. The tuma of lady is like yoled is the tani ki yozoiv dama machmas atzma v'lo machmas vlad v'kam yikishua dama machmas vlad. So our Gemara is asking how many days is the pains that it determines that the blood that comes with it is due to the vlad. Afilu memo chamishim yoyim koydem leida. So says the Gemara, back into the Gemara, 7 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Meir Oimer. 40 or 50 days prior to Leida. Rav Yehuda says Rav Yehuda, no, it's only during the 9th month, her month, referring to the 9th month of labor. And now here's the opinion that we're looking for, because Shmuel saying we're passing like Rav Yosi in this case. Rav Yosi v'Rav Shimon Oimrim Ein Kisha Yosi Mishtei Shabbos. It's 2 weeks, and that is the third case that we're learning we passing like Rav Yosi. Again, we brought in this segment of Psak Halacha because we had a din in our Mishnah. The din in our Mishnah, ruling with the androgynous feeding his wife, Truma, which we began today on Machlokes Rav and Shmuel, whether the Mishnah falls off due to the Bryce or not. And we paskin like Rav Yosi that you could feed the wife Truma. It's a Vadai Zachar. And based off of that, we're saying 3 other cases that were passing like Rav Yosi. And Shmuel is teaching us the remaining 2. So one of them is this din of the childbirth. Continues the Gemara, Kiddush. What is this case of Kiddush? What is this case of rendering something unfit? The Tanan, as you learned in the Mishnah, 3 lines to the bottom of the Amid, says in the Mishnah, if someone spreads his vines over the grain of his friend, of course, vines, grapes, and grain do not mix. That's called klayim. You're not allowed to grow them together. So if someone puts his vines on top of his the grain of his friend, kadesh, it makes the grain kadesh. Kadesh is from the word of holy, a word of unfit, that makes it into klayim. That you have grain and grape, grain and vineyard. The two do not mix, and therefore they are unfit, the grain. And the person that did that is b'chayev achriyusai tivri Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says you're chayev for the loss. Rav Yosi, Rav Shimon Aimrim says Rav Yosi and Rav Shimon, as we turn over to pay Gimel Amid base, says Rav Yosi, Rav Shimon ain't on the meiser davar she'einoi sheloi. No, you can't answer something which is not yours, and therefore it does not become kalayim, and therefore there's no loss that he's incurring, and therefore you don't have to pay anything. For a quick moment, we have to swing over and look at the top Taisus over here. That Taisus points out that this case is different than a regular case of asring davar she'enoi shaloi. That Taisus basically points out that if something is, we'll call it essentially forbidden. If I put milk in my friend's cholent, you can't say, oh, it's your friend's item, you can't make it usher. Because the entity right now is basar and chalav. The entity is treif. Here, with the din of kilayim, is a different story. Din of kilayim is something that needs totally b'machshava. As Taisus points out on the first narrow line, and that's the reason why you can't answer your friend's item. And this is a very important rule in all of halacha. Answering davar shein shaloi comes up in various areas of halacha. It comes up in Hilchos Shabbos. If you mess up with your friend's item, do you make it aser, etc. But says the Gemara, that is the reason why over here says Rav Yosi, it does not become aser. Ibayilu, ask the Gemara. So that's the end really of part 1 of today's shir. We began on androgynous, Machlokes Rav and Shmuel, how to deal with the Mishnah versus the Bryce. So within the psak of Rav Yosi in our Mishnah of the androgynous feeding his wife, Truma, we got involved in a sidebar din Rav Yosi teaching us. The Gemara teaches us, 4 psakim like Rav Yosi, 2 concluding of Shmuel, almost random. Now says the Gemara, Pei Gimel Amud Beis Ibayilu on the top line, by androgynous Mali Amar. Says the Gemara, what Mali Amar Shmuel, ask the Gemara, what does Shmuel say to me? So now the Gemara explains what's going on. Tashema, the Amar Shmuel Rav Anan, Lesa Lebraisa Machim Masisa, going back to the first part of Amud Aleph, that Shmuel told Rav Anan the Bryce has no place in light of the Mishnah. So Arkava Mali Amar Shmuel. So ask the Gemara, so that's number 1, that Shmuel taught us, that the Brisa has no place in light of the Mishnah. Number 2, asks the Gemara, Harkava Mali Amar Shmuel, regarding grafting, the second din. What does Shmuel say? Again, we had 4 psakim la'alacha. The last 2 were from Shmuel. So now the Gemara is asking, what does Shmuel hold about the first 2 psakim in Rav Yosi? So number 1, we said Shmuel holds that the lesa lebraisa makmasis and the brisa falls off. Number 2 says the Gemara, what does Shmuel hold regarding the din of grafting? Tashema, which again we quoted in Amud Aleph, a 3-way machlokes, and one of them was Rav Yosi, that it was 2 weeks before Rosh Hashanah. So says the Gemara, what does Shmuel hold of this din? Tashema, Darmali Shmuel Rav Anan, Tani, Command Amar, Shleisha U Shleishim. 3 and 30, not like Rabbi Yosi. And finally, Kushi Mali, what does Shmuel hold with regard to, Kushi Mali Omar Rav? Now the Gemara flips it. The dinim of Shmuel, the final two dinim, what does Rav hold? Says the Gemara, Teku. We do not have an answer what Rav would say about this din of Kushi, of labor, how long the dam that an Isha sees could be attributed to the child. Kiddush Mali Omar Rav. The final and fourth thing that Shmuel taught us regarding making an item unfit, the vineyards being putting on top of the grains, whether you could ask your friend's item, what does Rav hold? That we do not baskin like Rav Yosi. Why are you saying like that statement? What about the following statement? That we yes baskin like Rav Yosi. Amar Bei Rav, Manu Ravuna, Ravuna Amar. Ein halacha. Says the Gemara when that second quote that you just told me was Amri, the yeshiva of Rav said, who was that? It was Rav Huna, and indeed Rav Huna says ein halacha. So that's what Rav would hold with regards to the final halacha, that ein halacha ke Rav Yosi. Continues the Gemara about 10 lines down at the two dots. Rav Yuda Omer Tumtum, continuing the quote of the Mishnah, Tumtum again is one in which the Zachris and the Kivas, the genitalia is covered over, and the Mishnah said, what happens if it's ripped open and it's found out that the person is indeed a Zachar? Said the Mishnah, he cannot perform Chalitza. Why not? Because even though you know now he's a Zachar, but he has the status of a Sris, he cannot have children, therefore he's not allowed to do Chalitza. Amar Ravami, my Ovid, Le Rav Yehuda, Le Tumtum de Biri. What does Rav Yehuda do about the Tumtum of Biri? Explains the Gemara, the Oisvei Abi Kursei Ve'ikri, that what happened? That he went and they ripped it open, he had surgery, and what happened? And he gave birth to 7 children. So you're telling me, based on the Mishnah, you're telling me, Rabbi Yehuda, that a tum-tum that you rip it open, you find he's a Zachar, is a Sris and can't have children. What do you mean? There was a story, a medical miracle. They ripped it open, they found he's a Zachar, and boom! He had 7 children. Answers the Gemara of Rav Yehuda Amar Lecha, Chazer al Banav Me'ayin Heim. You know what Rav Yehuda would answer? He had 7 kids. Let's figure out where those kids really came from. Those kids weren't here. He can't have children. Go look into it and find out what exactly was going on with his wife. Tanya, we learned in a Brayso of Rav Yehuda Omer Tom Tom Lo Yachle Shem Yikra V'Nimsa Sris. Tom Tom cannot do Chalitza. Why not? Because they'll be torn open and found that he is a Sris Chama. He cannot have children. Ask the Gemara, Atu called the Mikri Zachar? Have is every tumtum that torn open a male? Hachi Kamer. No, this is what I meant. Shema Yikra V'Nimsa Nekeva V'Afilu Nimsa Zachar. And even if you find that he is indeed a Zachar and therefore should theoretically be able to do Chalitza, Shema Yimsa Sris Chama. Maybe he's a Sris Chama. He cannot have children. Maybe now, what's the difference between these two ways of learning of Rav Yehuda and Avuah of his father? Amar Rava explains Rava. Live sol b'makam achlis v'lich loitz shaloi b'makam achem ika beinayu. The difference is going to be where there are other brothers, and when can there be chalitza done when there are no other brothers? For a moment, let's look at Rashi. Rashi here points out, Rashi is about 12 lines into the narrow lines. Rashi says, what's the in Rav Yisi, Rav Yehuda, and Avuah? So live Solomakam Achem. Im Yesh Achen Shalem. If there are other brothers in the story that are full-fledged, complete, healthy people. V'chalatz la Tumtum. And the Tumtum went and did the Chalitza. Rav Yehuda Damar Shu Kesaris. According to Rav Yehuda, that is the status of the Sris. He can't do Chalitza. Machzik la B'Sris Vaday. V'lo Pasal Achen U'Misyah Be'emes. A massive Chiddush. Even though he did Chalitza, he holds it's a Sris Vaday. And the brothers can still do Yibam. Well, the Rav Yosi Shema Katami, that's the difference. Rav Yosi, Rav Yehuda didn't say it's a vada, it's a certainty. It's a perhaps he's a sris. Sveiku, and therefore if a suffix goes and does chalitza, what happens? The apostles of the brothers that they are not able to subsequently do Yibam or chalitza. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Amar Rav Abba Achua Rav Yehuda Bar Zavdi Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Androgenes Chayiv Alav Skila, and Androgenes is Chayiv Skila from either of the two places. Again, an Androgenes being a person who has a both both forms of Zachrus and Nekevus. We're not sure he has an Aver, we're not sure he has a Makom, I say Makom of an Isha. So says the Gemara, if two androgynuses sleep with each other from either place, they're Chayav, whether it's via the Aver, whether it's via the, I say Makom. Either way, excuse me, no, that was incorrect. Mishnei Mekaymes, whether it's from the front or from the back, whether it's from the anus, whether it's from the vagina, either way, those two areas, it's going to be considered Mishkav Zachar at some level. It's a forbidden relationship, and therefore the androgynous is Chayiv Skila. So Meisvei asks him, really, Rav Lazar, I'm androgynous Chayiv Skila Kibbeh Zachar. He's Chayiv Skila, like one who sleeps with a Zachar. But Medvar Mamurim Bizachrus Shaloi. What does that refer to? That only refers to with his Zachrus, that if he did it like two men would have relations together through the back. But if he did it with his female organ, then butter, then he's butter. So ask the Gemara, you're telling me that androgynous mamish has a din of two different people, that either hole in his body, its body we should say, could cause it to be chayiv skila. We see in a brayse and not that way. Explains the Gemara, androgynous chayiv skila mishtei mekayim. Is my time to have say my Rav Bar Hamduri Azbar Ali. Let me explain it to you. That Vazachal Sishka Mishka Isha says in the Torah, and the Zachar you should not sleep with the sleeping of a woman. Ezehu Zachar Shishba Shnei Mishka voice. Where is the Zachar that has Shnei Mishka voice? Says the Gemara of Yomer Zandroginus. You learn that from the pasuk, the plural word used in the pasuk, honing in on the detail that there's a potential two Mekaymes to have Tashmish is referring to the androgynous. And that's the reason why there's going to be skila in either places. For Rabbanan, he says Zachar Ksiv. According to Rabbanan, even though there are two places, still it says as Zachar, and therefore the only chayiv in this Zacharus. For Rabbanan, Zachar Greater Minalu. According to Rabbanan, where do they know that a regular man having relations with another man, where do they know that's in Issa Deraisa? If they're using this pasuk to teach us a din about androgynous, what do they do about a regular man and man? Explains the Gemara, Mei Isha, Be Isha, Mei Isha. He learns that from the extra men. Be Isha Shloi Kedar Kuminalu. Ask the Gemara, where do we know that if one sleeps with a woman, Shaloi Kedarka through the backside? How do we know that is a din of a tashmish, that is a din of sleeping together? Mei Ve'o Isha from the extra Vav. And we're going to conclude today's shir that the Gemara teaches us 10 lines from the bottom. First one line is Lahu. Amar Shizvi Amar Rav Chisda. Says Rav Shizvi named Rav Chisda, Loi Lekol Amar Rav Eliezer Androgynous Zachar Ma'al Yohu. Not for everything did Rav Eliezer say that androgynous is a full-fledged Zachar. She'im Ata Omer King, because if you're going to tell me that he mamish as a din of a Zachar, B'mukdashin Yaktish, then what should halacha be with regard to Mukdashim, with regard to Hektish, items of the Beis HaMikdash? If he goes and he makes an animal, a carbon yaktish, it should work. So how do we know it's not true? You're telling me it's not a full-fledged zachar. So how do we know that if he goes and it's makdish an item, it does not become kadosh? The Tana Rabbanan not near of that. V'hamuksa v'hanevad v'estan u'mchir v'tumtim v'adroigenis metamim begodim abeis abliya. And all these items, all these items, they make tamei their clothing via the throat of the person wearing them, because they are a nevela. Rav Eliezer Oimer, Tumtum androgynous ein mitamim begodim abeis abliya. Shay Rav Eliezer Oimer, Kol makashemer zachar nekeva tamoitzi Tumtum androgynous mibeinehem ve'oif hayav loinemer by zachar nekeva. And with regard to the case of an oif, a bird carbon, tamoitzi Tumtum androgynous mibeinehem, you cannot exclude the Tumtum and the androgynous, and therefore we see clearly Rav Eliezer does not treat us an androgynous as a zachar with regard to kachim from his final drasha and his praisa, and that's the reason why Rav Eliezer is saying that if an androgynous goes and his makdish an animal is not kaddish, he does not have a din as a zachar regarding this din. I'll pick it up from Nachar Yitzchak in the next year. B'siyata Dishmayo.